Blacklight. We're so excited to meet you and talk to you today. You've been actually really big part of our community. I feel like you've gotten busy because we used to see you more often in the group
Yeah.
chats. So I hope that's a good thing, and
Yep.
that probably means we have lots to talk about. But I mean, I'm excited to hear from you because we're on so many different sides of the spectrum of what's going on in this creative space. What I associate with you and Min, I'm curious what your fandom looks like for Blacklight, but like I think you're doing it. Like a lot of people are sort of jumping in, whether it's because they're transitioning from traditional media and this is a new output, or it's people that are new and it's creator economy doing its thing. But like I watch your trajectory from medium distance and afar. You're doing it. You're building community. You are building brands. You're building a business. So that means a lot to me, and I think to a lot of people that this is, for some it's an expression, it's art form, all these things are wonderful. But I think for so many people, this is an endeavor, this is a career. I love hearing about your journey. And Min, I don't know if you want to sort of tee up sort of your fanboydom for Blacklight and how excited.
No,
I think we're both excited.
I just have enjoyed hanging out. Yeah, definitely we haven't hung out as much lately, but I enjoyed interacting a bunch with Will on X as well. Do you guys still do X?
I do. Yeah. I find that X is really good for like finding colleagues and finding other creators, and
Right.
really good for community. I do a weekly space on Sundays called Art Party, and it started as really just a way to kind of chat with each other. We started around Gen 48 last year doing it. And yeah, it's just kind of evolved, and people kind of come in and ask questions on what they're working on, and we kind of point people to different tools that they might be needing, or any creator in the space kind of at any point will hit a wall somewhere and they don't know how to work around that wall. So it's a great place for us to kind of brainstorm ideas on how to work through different stuff.
Well, let's rewind a little bit. I mean, origin story, because you don't seem, based on today's conversation, as someone who just got out of high school and started being creative. I'm going to guess you've had some chapters, but but forgive me for predicting your beard as an age tool. But would love to know how what's your path? Did you have a traditional pathway into this stuff, or maybe what are your other adventures before you became the Blacklight?
I've always been kind of an artist. I did photography. I'm a painter. I've art work that I've always done, writer. So I've always kind of been in the art space. I graduated college in the early 2000s during the recession, and I was living in Florida at the time, and there was no jobs. Out of college, I was writing obituaries for the local newspaper. And one afternoon, like 4:00, I looked out the window and I was like, this is not going to be my life. So I moved out west, was in Seattle for a long time, moved into tech. And then as I focused on my career, kind of arts fell away for a little bit. And then when the writer strikes happened with AI, I was really intrigued because as a writer myself, I was curious on what the arguments were, what was going on with it. I was really kind of engaged with what was happening at that time with it. And then I thought to myself, before I make a fully informed decision, let me get in here and kind of see what this is about myself. See what the arguments are, what the tools are. And I saw very clearly that there was kind of two main paths with AI. The argument, which the haters say, is, it's stealing from other creative works. We see this often with people doing recreations of popular IPs in a different time frame or something like that. And I wanted to know if it was possible to use these tools in a way that was purely creative, that didn't rely on anybody else. Now, all things aside with, how models are trained and things like that, like as a creator, can you move in and create something genuinely brand new? And I saw A's Alter's work, and he was the first video where I was like, what is this? Like, how did he create this? Like, how did he have a budget to do this? And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I am really interested in your series. Like, how did you do this? And that's how I kind of started, and just immediately kind of knew that I wanted to be on social media and do it that way, because I saw some accounts that were doing it there. I was like, hey, it might be a way to make some extra money. And then, now A's is one of my closest AI friends. We talk regularly as sounding boards to each other, and we hit each other up with different tactics and strategies and how we market ourselves. And He's been a really great friend in the space. And yeah, I told myself I was just going to post every day for a year and kind of see what happens in a year from now. And it was a year last month, and my trajectory has been great. I'm on a lot of projects right now, so I've been working on a lot of different things, keeping busy, plus working full time during the day.
Wait, so you posted once a year, once a day. What does that mean? Like images or full on videos, or what was
Full
the
on
commitment that
videos.
you made? So like
Yeah.
I
people
was thinking the same
style,
thing. Yeah.
Yep.
right? You know, people does, right?
Yep. And so I started with like music videos. And at first, like when I first started, it was kind of just taking samples from other musicians. But you can only do like a minute or so before you get DMCA'd. And I was like, well,
Right.
I like making this stuff and I feel like I want to put more out there. I never really wanted to like create for an algorithm. You know, there's certain social media rules that you do for certain platforms to gain engagement. I just never wanted to do that. I didn't want to create a 9 by 16. I felt like the palette was too small. I like creating in 16 by 9. It gives me more space to play with. And yeah, so then I started creating my own music, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And then in October, I did Whispers in the Dark, which was like an episodic. So each day, I was like, originally I was going to go into it and do like weekly kind of horrors and start with, you know, childhood horror stories and then progress into more like real life horrors. And then as I was working through that project, it kind of morphed and started to create its own IP, its own characters and stories. And one of the best pieces of advice that A's gave me was, you know, create a universe and think of that universe as a bucket. And then everything you create fits in that bucket.
Hmm.
And since then, I've just been developing stories that all fit and kind of tie together. So I finished that episodic piece. It turned into like a full length film. I followed it up in November with After Death, which was like another hour and a half, like artistic film. And then in November, let's see, and then December, I did a collaboration with West Coast AI Labs. We did kind of an homage to Everything is Terrible, which was a really popular, like early 2000s West Coast based like artist collective who took video and just things from TV and kind of mashed them together. And so we're like, can we create this but using AI and really kind of lean into like the slop of it all? And then in January, I did a third film called Rapture, which was like a modern American allegory, really kind of like a mask off. Like if the people that were saying these things that are hiding behind religion really didn't have the veneer of they do now, what would it look like? And we really just kind of leaned into the socio-political landscape that we've been dealing with, and really just kind of an outlet for me to handle everything that's been happening. And then since then, I
What's
started
been
to work
happening?
on.
Fine. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
it's great, right?
AI is awesome. I mean, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I one thing that struck me, is horror like a primary genre for you?
Not necessarily. I try to like pull. I use a lot of body horror stuff, and I find that I lean into it because I really lends itself to horror really well. But it also is like kind of an outlet for me. You know, there's a lot of.
And I guess the reason I'm asking, and I'm curious if this is a thing, is I think a lot about this moment that you're in the middle of and how it feels like an echo of what YouTube started. That YouTube cracked open, anybody can distribute, and
Mhm.
anybody can make can reach whoever they want as long as they hustle and grind. And that's kind of first assumption of the creator economy. Is now you no longer have to wait to be permitted to distribute. But in spite of that, cameras are pretty good. Lots of people have a lot of access to tools, but there were still some things that, in spite of all the content that YouTube has brought us, I feel like horror and like sci-fi are these things that kind of tend to require a certain type of Hollywood toolkit.
Mhm.
And I guess I've just been thinking to myself, like, if I was like an AI studio just launching today, like, where would I focus my efforts? And I think a lot about horror and sci-fi as like things that YouTubers were a little bit limited, unless they were doing the UGC Blair Witch stuff. So maybe my thesis is broken. But anyway, I guess it's interesting to me that horror actually does feel like something that there is a new capability, that you don't need that giant Eli Roth or Ari Aster budget to
Yeah.
perhaps communicate. Do you agree, or am I making
I
that up?
agree,
I don't
yeah,
know.
and I don't think it's necessarily. I think there's a level of horror that people lean into where it's like the shock value, like you mentioned Eli Roth, like the really in your face, gory kind of just raw, visceral horror. Then there's also like subversive horror, and to me, like real life horror. And I wanted to kind of bring that with a mix of surrealism because we don't really see a lot of surrealism in modern media. It's often disregarded as too artistic or too avant-garde, and it doesn't really get a lot of like mainstream kind of movement. And with younger generations coming up and the way that they consume media, like I wanted to bring those types of styles to a younger generation and show it in a way that is fun and new and exciting. And I've always said that like the point of AI is not necessarily to recreate existing media, but really to highlight the impossibleness of what can be created with AI. And so, more than anything, I try to lean into the impossible nature of AI and things that you wouldn't be able to recreate without, a massive Hollywood budget. And, I used to love watching Face Off, the where they do all the makeup and all that stuff, and a lot of that stuff is going by the wayside because of CGI. And I think the strengths of AI are that impossibleness that you can create with it.
I'm the most excited about that, and I feel like we're still in a bubble. It's so funny because like it's made so much progress in a year,
Mm-hmm.
and we still probably know by name most of the people that are like at the top of their game in this world. And like it's like maybe a few hundred people
Yeah.
plus a few tens of thousands.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
it feels that way. It's a really
yeah,
small community. I mean, I
super
think
small.
of just the Gen AI community. I'm a mod of. Chris first kind of put that together, and it's approaching 200,000 members on X. I mean, that's a huge audience. And then recently, I've seen virality on TikTok, and so it's been a focus for not only myself but for West Coast AI Labs to kind of break out of that bubble. Like I think of the Truman Show when the wife they're having a conversation and she starts to sell him the coffee, and he's sitting there like, who are you talking to? Like, and I feel like we get into these traps of communicating with each other, and there's something to be said to breaking out of that bubble and finding what works for a mainstream audience, because as the space grows and matures, there will be more AI content, and so that market research is totally invaluable to me.
And so like as a result, it's interesting being in this bubble in this moment, and kind of as a result, we have a lot of freedom. I feel
Hmm.
to just do whatever we want. I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't know if
Right.
it's going to be more freedom in the future or it's going to be less freedom, because then at some point maybe it will all settle and there will be lanes, you know.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, how do you choose what to do? What do you want to do with that big white space?
Yeah,
Like,
and I think that's an important thing to note is that a lot of the creators are really just behaving because we have respect for each other and for the tools that we use. Like anyone that's kind of at the top of their game could go out today and make a very convincing deepfake video that could probably do some serious damage. And they don't, because they know the repercussions of that would harm all of us and what we're all trying to build together. Like whether we like it or not, like none of us are really competition with each other. We're really all colleagues in a new field. And there's a lot of opportunity that no one really wants to, cross the line. I think of some creators that have gone that route. I know there's some creators that are in other countries that love to make fun of politicians in this country and kind of kick the hornet's nest. Not necessarily the approach that I want to do. I really want to highlight the tools in a way that is creating something new. That's something that people haven't seen before.
You sort of like just buried your own lead earlier before that and I made a 90-minute film, which I'm sort of always a little ambivalent, where I hear a lot of people bring up that like I made a feature film with AI, because that's this sort of like headline that everybody's either scared of or excited about, depending on where
Mm-hmm.
you are on the spectrum. Sometimes I think that it's mainly running time. Like
Yeah.
you've reached 90 minutes. I could hit record on a camera too for 90 minutes. But I guess, what did that mean to you? I mean, again, I've sometimes have creative collaborators that like, let's make a feature. I'm like, wow, that sounds like a lot of work. Like,
Yeah.
and I kind of prefer this sort of big permission slip that AI seems to have to run towards shorts and fast iterations and get quick feedback from people that really did have the time to sit through. What's your instinct and what does that mean to you to make a 90-minute film? What are you trying to achieve there? Are you trying to get into a theater? Is that mainly a challenge to yourself?
It was
I'm
mainly a
curious how you relate
challenge.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think about it as you know, media consumption as a whole is just changing. You know, the way people consume media is changing. People aren't necessarily always going to a movie theater, but they're always on their phone. They're always on social media. And so for me as a creator, I think it's in a creator economy, it's important to meet people where they're at and not and lower the barrier to access as much as possible. So if that means I'm doing an episodic that it's building up to the end of the month for a final conclusion, or a storyline that's continuing, like with different subplots that are happening. That's what I'm doing now. Is I have an overarching kind of universe, and then I'm telling individual stories, but it's got a very much akin to like a telenovela type of feel to it. Where people can tune in each day. They might miss a couple episodes, but they're not really missing a lot of the story because it's just continuously ongoing with different little subplots that are continuing on.
I mean, it's just like we're all kind of reinventing genre.
Yeah.
We're kind of like looking at the formats themselves as being up for grabs. And like, usually that I think somebody told me that the only reason movies are like 90 or 120 minutes is just because that's how much film like fit into canisters or something in like the early days. That it was just like a good unit for a PA or something like that. There was something bizarrely like arbitrary of why. I think eventually it probably became a good commodity to kind of get butts in seats too. I mean, just in that sort of maybe direction. I mean, again, I think when I say you're doing it, I think, and I don't need to open up your bank accounts. I just mean like you're working as an AI artist. Like what sort of patterns have you now seen? I mean, you understood life before AI as a creator.
Yeah.
What's sort of something you might offer as advice even to people listening that I maybe early on this career, maybe struggling to break through? Like what's sort of something that you've learned is an important sort of takeaway?
Engage with everybody. I've had accounts that have hit me up on TikTok that look like they're bot accounts, and they're major studio heads, or like someone who's offering me a really huge contract that has a, at user 97473, whatever. Like it looks like a bot, and I'll engage with anyone that will engage with me to an extent. And then if they say, I want to chat with you about something, take it offline. I've gotten consultation jobs that way. I've gotten intros to other studios to work with them on projects. I've been reached out to about developing TV shows. I've gotten reached out to now with some pretty well-known producers and be doing sketch comedy. So the opportunities lie behind that engagement. And if you're, just posting and not really engaging, no one's going to care. In a sea of thousands of creators, it's the ones that stand out are the people that are engaging with their communities and that show appreciation for the work that's coming in there. The younger generations don't idolize celebrities like the older generations do. They find it actually repulsive. And so they're much more akin to have a conversation with someone and be a part of your community when you're engaging with them, when they feel seen, when they feel heard. And that's probably been my biggest shocker. And I hate social media. Like I'm not.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
I'm like actually an extroverted introvert. I don't like engaging with lots of people. I find it, I get really drained from it. I like to be in my little bubble and just do my own thing most of the time. So
That's interesting. So were you a social media person before all this, or did you learn that as like a new skill to trade? Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something you have to flex, and I have a hard time with it because I'm blunt and very honest. I don't really have a filter, and if something's great, I will praise it. If something's bad, I will shit all over it. I just don't have that filter, and I think that comes from a place like in my day job, in my career, I've worked hard to get to a point where I'm respected because I don't bullshit people. I kind of keep it honest with them. And I'm kind of blunt with it. And, life's too short to fluff people, so you either keep it real or you don't. And the people that are, just try to play games, I really just don't engage with that much.
It's interesting. I wonder where, because I think you've been rolling for like a year now. I wonder where the new folks, like how do they enter? It's so funny because we asked another guest a few weeks ago, like, do you think it's too late? And they were like, yes, it's too late to get into the AI film community. And I was
I
like,
agree.
I had to think about that for a while, and I was like, I don't know that it's too late. I definitely think the community is still small.
Yeah.
It is like people like yourself, Dave Clark, NeuralViz, others like that have kind of established their brand in this budding universe. And as a result, are kind of like, what you were saying, like are getting a lot of inbound from that because the curious are just going to get more curious, or there's going to
Yeah.
be more curious people.
And there's a lot of lanes, right? There's no
Right.
one path to success. Like, and
Right.
that's why I say, like, no one's really competition. It's all potential collaboration opportunities, because there's film, there's advertisement, there's education, there's marketing. There's so many avenues that you can go down. And you can be in multiple lanes. There's certain things, like Chanel's probably not going to hit me up to do a commercial for them, but Thrasher might. So there's so many different ways to get to where you want to go, that there's no roadmap to success. I think the biggest thing is, creating your brand and identity, whatever that looks like for you, and then building on that. And the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And so
I love that journey of
every day
1,000
you
miles.
just got to show up and just keep building towards that goal, fill that brand, fill that universe. And for my content specifically, I've seen now, because now this week I'm getting fan art and people are sending me videos and my merch. Like,
Wow.
and I don't think I've seen many AI artists who have people like literally posting on social media their excitement for getting a T-shirt from an art creator that they've seen. So it's about creating those stories and characters that resonate with people, that they look forward to seeing. It's
And
honestly been kind of overwhelming.
we were on with Mean Orange Cat yesterday in our community call, and we learned a little bit about their team. And it seems like it's a team of a few people. And then sometimes we talk to like friends like Verena Poom, who I'm guessing is in Small World too with us. But she shared with us like this like org chart of sorts with like a project that was like undisclosed, and we're not supposed to know what it is. And we still don't know what it is. But it was a lot of people. I'm just saying it was a big lot of triangles and squares and org charty stuff. What's your version of that? Are you still is it mostly like a
Just
one
me.
person? Yeah. Tell me what is that studio of the present? Like I think that's either unsettling or exciting to people, that wow, like this much can happen by
It's
yourself.
scary a little bit for people, I'm sure. And it can be, I'm on projects with a lot of people. But I find the more people you have, the more personalities you have to manage. And, everyone has different goals for themselves, for their brands, for, what they're trying to do. Like I mentioned, I'm part of West Coast AI Labs. We take a little bit of a different approach, where there's not like a studio head and an org chart or anything. It's much more of a flat organization, where it's more of like an artist collective. Kind of, we take the approach of divide and conquer, where we'll do collaborative projects together from time to time, but we also have individual projects. Sometimes they're working on a project right now that isn't necessarily in my wheelhouse, but it's in theirs. So, I got the inquiry from a contact, I passed it over to them. We all, take a piece of that and different, percentages based off the amount of work that's happening. But and we're looking to kind of expand that and grow that network. Because you never know, what's inspires you to make something. I might not be really excited to make something, and if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be that creative with it. You're really just going to kind of rush through that project just to get paid. And we're all passionate about like the things that we want to make. So if it's not something that's in my wheelhouse, I've passed probably more jobs off to other people than I've taken personally, to be honest.
It's I love that community energy. I had a follow up with Min. What were you thinking?
It's interesting because you make me wonder, like, because the tools are getting better, every day. And for someone like you, who's kind of an auteur, blacklight auteur, you can do more, and you can experiment more. Obviously, coding is going through crazy developments faster than anything else, I feel like, in AI. And so, like, I could see a world where you're building, entire, Pokemon franchise that you're, type thing, and it's just you. And at the same time, I also think about the other direction that things are going, where, hey, people are they're going to dream huge. They're gonna make really complex GTA 25,
Hmm.
complex worlds, and they're gonna need 1,000 AI generators
Right.
to pull that off. So it's kind of I don't know. It just made me kind of think about where that
Yeah.
two
I'm
directions are.
actually in talks right now. I was reached out to by some veteran video game designers, and they've made some really well-known video games. And they're like, "Hey, we want you to lead up the creative direction on this and what that looks like."
Hmm.
Um, and so that's exciting. That's going to be a good project. But that's 15, a team of 15 that are all on the video game side, and really just me on the AI kind of creative side. And
That's
you
awesome.
bring up a good point on that. Like there's just different strategies for how you want to do it. And the way you make money is different too, right? Like I make money as a brand, but I also can make money as a contributor. And you can create projects that you want to make as an artist, which is great. But for the majority of people, what ultimately will happen is what's like a work to task, where you're hired as a creator, but it's not necessarily your vision. You're doing the work for somebody else's vision. And there's a place for that. Some people are open to doing that work. I am doing projects like that, but it's not like where I want to necessarily be.
Hmm. Where do you see it going for you, at least? Like what kind of big dreams do you have?
I want to be on the sphere.
You want to be in a sphere.
Hmm.
Sphere is cool.
I want to open up my hotel window and see my art just plastered all over the sphere.
I see it.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, really just expanding into the brand and being a creator. I'm open to really a lot of different opportunities.
What, unless they're trade secrets, what might you sort of, for people that are alongside you in this hustle, like what's the war room look like inside this one room of creativity? Like what are your tools that you like a lot? What are your go-tos? And I've actually, one thing I'm most curious about next to that is there's such a rapid cycle that things
Hmm.
keep cycling. And I'm curious, what are some tools that you thought were locked in and then you've quickly let go?
Yeah. Well, I'm in a lot of creative partnerships, so I'm trying not to pick favorites here, but
Fair.
there are backbones to my workflow. 11 Labs, obviously for voice, is my go-to for that. I use Comfy UI for lip sync, along with Hedra and HeyGen. So that
Korea just
technology,
announced today. Did you see that
yeah,
Korea announcement? I'm into it.
yeah, I saw Kriya's too. I also use Kriya for model training, which I'll create images in Comfy, and then I will take a handful of that collection curated, and then I'll go into Kriya and make a model from that. And then I use those models for different projects. So that's been a really big boon to my creative process. Um, I also am trying to keep a 10,000 foot view on it and look at like what lawsuits are out there right now with different companies for their data sets. That's a concern for me. Like if I'm creating so much content and then it comes out later on that this data set was dirty and you can't be monetizing from it, all of that work I did was for nothing. So really just trying to be cognizant of the landscape. Like you mentioned, there's a lot to pay attention to every day. And if you're new in the space, it's very much like jumping on a moving treadmill already and trying to keep up. So my advice for people is find the tools that work for you, and get comfortable with how they work. Don't get distracted by the new flashy thing that's out. Get your workflow down to a comfortable level for you. And then when you're ready to do something new or you hit a wall where you can't work around, then explore the options that are out there to get around that. Like I didn't necessarily need a character in 5 different perspectives when I first started. Now I do. So as you develop the need, and I think it truly is a journey for a creator using these tools, is going through the process of creating, of shipping, like complete a full video, see what that process is like, and then do it again, and then do it again, and do it again. That practice will really
I
hone
love
your
that. And I
skill.
think just saying that out loud is, I think, so important to people that are new to this is that I just always remember being like straight out of college and living with my roommate who was a painter at the time. And I was like, I envious. I was like, oh, he can just like throw away the painting when he's done. Like it's fuck it. I don't care. Like, or you pick up his guitar and try something and not like, and I'm sitting there like putting together like a proposal, trying to call favors. Can somebody show up on a weekend? Can you help me cast this? Because that's what it used to be. Like just to try stuff was
Mm-hmm.
such, and that became its own thing of what required this big machinery of Hollywood to subsidize that stuff on a bigger scale. That ability to just say like, I'm just going to keep doing stuff, that like doing it every day thing. Like, I think that is such a
Yeah.
huge message to people that also get hung up on like doing things perfect, is that like the actual,
Yeah. It
right, like
doesn't
the
have to be
value is just
perfect.
getting it done. And what did you learn from it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I grew up playing piano for about 10 years. My parents made me start playing when I was 5. And I had a very strict piano teacher where you had to practice every day. And it was almost like, I think back on it now, like she would almost shame you for not practicing. Like, how come you don't know this? You had a week to practice this. Why don't you know that? And it was instilled in me very early on that like to get good at something, you have to practice it. You have to go through it, be willing to fail, fail fast and move on, learn from your mistakes and just keep growing. And you bring up a great point that like, it doesn't have to be perfect. My audience doesn't care if a green screen is showing a little bit here or there, or something might be off somewhere. If they're entertained, they'll keep coming back. If they like your content, they'll keep coming.
Are you not entertained?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's where I really wonder. I keep oscillating to the future stuff. Like because I'm so curious how audiences are going to react to things as it accelerates.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really feel I don't know. I'm kind of I was kind of thinking about it a lot lately, like how small things are, and at the same time, like I guess the analogy that I've been leaning into recently is that it's like if in my whole neighborhood everybody is in a horse and carriage,
Mm-hmm.
and then like suddenly like my neighbor is like in a Waymo. I think that's what it's gonna feel like, because
It
I
is,
feel like
yeah.
we currently, we AI filmmakers and artists live in the neighborhood where everybody's in a Waymo,
Mm-hmm.
but like everybody else in the county is like on a horse and carriage, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't know, or maybe we're all in Toyota Camrys, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then
and I
next
get a lot of
year
that
we're in a
feedback.
Waymo, and then the whole county's like, what? There's
I
Waymos
think
now?
I'm on a mountain.
And we're like, well, we've been telling you guys for a year or two that this is happening, and now here we are in fucking Waymos,
I'm on a mountain bike,
Yeah.
man. I don't know what you're talking about, but I love these metaphors. Like, what do they mean? But I guess like to add on to this sort of reaction to that point is, I think because practice, I don't know if it makes perfect, but it makes you better. Like, I wonder if that's another
Mhm.
way of being bullish on this moment of creativity, is that it's giving a whole wave of people that used to participate a chance to now practice the way a great musician practices, the way a great writer gets to. I
Mhm.
wonder if that's something that people haven't fully processed, is that ability to iterate and
Yeah.
practice, and how many more people get to do it. I think that should, I keep, every time I do a consult, I'd say, look, there's a lot of questions about where's the industry headed, but creativity is getting amazing. Like the actual thing that you used to go
Mhm.
to an art museum for, if that's something you used to do or still do, that's
Mhm.
about to
Oh
get
yeah.
amazing in terms of what we're getting to see out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and there's something to be said, like in the process of iteration, like that's where the magic is. And I think when people get into using these tools, they understand that there is a little bit of a give and take with the AI on how this works. And I've had a project early on that I was hired to do, and the music producer gave me a full script on what he wanted, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I was like, I'll give you my best effort on it, but what I'm also going to do is take the song, I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to create something that I think fits for this. And I'll show you both products at the end. And if you like my version more, we'll keep that. If you like your version more, we'll do revisions on it. And after I did that, he saw my version. He's like, I'll never ask you again or I'll never give you the direction anymore. He's like, I trust your judgment. He's a great client. I've worked with him multiple times now. We have projects coming up in the future, so it's really exciting. So I think people have to see that, and in that practice, it's almost like shining the diamond and making it. That iteration is really crucial in the AI creative process. Like it's never the first output. If you're getting the first output and that's what you're running with, you could probably iterate more and get something better out of that. And I think that's where a lot of the magic is in the process.
What else, or do you feel like you're starting to observe as patterns? I think we're entering this year is like I sometimes feel like it's like the FOMO year, where like last year there was a lot of early
Mm-hmm.
adopters. Some people, like our previous guests, say it's over in terms of people getting a shot at getting in. Again, I think both me and Matt don't totally
Mm-hmm.
agree with that. But like, I do think this year where a lot of people are suddenly coming in, and again, it's either people that suddenly smell money in the water, or people that are just inspired. What are
Yeah.
patterns, maybe because of that, or even just how long you are now in the new position you're in? What are other? I mean, I think you taught us what did social media mean to you, and how that's become
Mm-hmm.
an engine of opportunity.
Yeah.
Whether as a storyteller with this sort of novel toolkit, this iteration process we just talked about. What else are you learning? Again, as someone who's been here before, you've been in the creative businesses, but what
Mm-hmm.
feels new here, that for someone that's trying to get work in this space, someone that's trying to make money, someone that's trying to build a career, what else are you learning from this front line, so to speak?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like it seems to that it comes in waves, right? And I would consider myself like one of the second wave artists that kind of came in. And maybe even third, depending on how you look at the time frame. But I noticed that a lot of the really good artists from the first wave kind of got snatched up. Everybody kind of started booking jobs, and then like the doors close, you don't hear anything, and it's like, oh nope, that's it. These are the people that are going to be doing it. And it's like, well, there's new people coming in that are really talented. There's people that have come in behind me that I see their work and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And I find that, just like I say with engaging with everybody, that community aspect has been more valuable than anything. And I take a different approach where I keep the door open behind me and I'm welcoming people in. And I think that we get mass adoption by being encouraging to new people coming in to show them, our tricks that we learned. Obviously, I'm not going to tell them everything I do, but I want them to come in. I want them to explore, and I want to break out of that bubble of, the same circle of people creating stuff. I want to see new people in the space, because who knows, some of the greatest storytellers may not have even entered the space yet. And I think that it's important that we are welcoming to new people into the space, and encourage them. And like you mentioned, there's people moving in now because they smell money in and they see the blood in the water. And there's pitfalls to that as well. There are people in the space, and Min and I have had conversations before about, I'm like, hey, I'm not so sure about this person. I think they're just trying to, everyone wants to put their hand in the cookie jar, but not everybody wants to do the work. As someone who practices day in and day out, it's a little bit of a slap in the face when someone comes and is like, hey, I want 10% of your pot. And it's like, for what? So and I want to provide that experience to other people. And I almost feel like protective of some of the people that have come in behind me, because I don't want them to have some of the experiences that I've had. I've had some negative experiences from people in the AI space that were not very friendly when I started, and almost like deterred me from getting into it, that I was wasting my time. And I don't think that is the right approach. So I've always been community focused. You guys are the same way, very community first. I mean, you take a lot of time out of your days to be in this and build community. I think you see the same importance in it that I do. And it's funny now on social media, I get comments all the time where like, I hate AI, but this is acceptable. Or like, I don't like AI, but I like this. And I think it's just showing people like a little bit of a peek behind the curtain isn't a bad thing. When people realize that it's not just entering one prompt and whole film comes out, when they see the amount of work that it takes. Like, some of my episodes take 8 hours a day to do. I'll sit at my computer for 14, 15 hours a day sometimes. And so when people see that you're like genuinely taking the time to create something and create it for an audience that they enjoy, like something that they love, and they request something and then you make it real for them, that is really powerful. And it goes a long way towards more people understanding what AI is, and really get into it and get into what it provides.
This might be sort of like a never-ending question, because I think it's still we never get answers to it in our chat, but it comes up all the time. For creators, price points. Like, what do we do here?
Hmm.
I mean, I have a perspective on it because I think I've seen different hype cycles on different texts, but like, it's such a tricky time because there's no, I don't know if people want guilds, but guilds sometimes do stuff like this.
Yeah.
Representatives, lawyers. This is where Hollywood built its many layers, is that there's people that sort of that hold the line on
Hmm.
these things, like what's it worth? What again from the place that you're at, and if it's like a really complicated,
Hmm.
wonky answer, I defer to you. But I'm just saying, like, have you
No,
developed a
it's
feeling?
super
Yeah.
simple actually.
What do you say?
Yeah. Yeah, I say that the acceptable range from the market research I've done is for 1 minute of AI content will cost anywhere between $500 and $1,000 for a project. If you're looking at an ongoing project, or something where it's consistently creating revenue, I'm working on a project right now that will consistently be creating revenue. A rev share scenario makes sense.
Meaning it's IP or
Creator
something?
splits are
Like meaning it's
usually,
something? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
So so creating IP that's generating revenue, usually a 60-40 split makes sense there,
60/40 favoring the
and that's
artist.
on the high end. Depending. So if the artist is the creator and the originator, yes. If it's somebody else who's doing the maintenance of the IP and the social media posting or the curation of the product itself, then they would be getting the higher end of the split, obviously. But that's what we've done. And then also a retainer model. If it's a project where with a client that you're going to be working with consistently, a retainer makes sense. And I go right back to those numbers is, somewhere in the range of $500 to $1,000 per minute of AI content. And when you look at a large film like that, do the math on a 90-minute project, $100,000 is very small potatoes for a 90-minute film versus Hollywood, who would be, you know, 30, 40, 50, 80 million. I mean, shit, 20 million to a single actor. So these numbers seem high when you talk about them to people, but this is that barrier breaking
I
moment
think it sounds
where
low, to be honest.
you
That
know
sounds low to me. Yeah.
exactly, and it genuinely is. But coming into the space, that is an acceptable range to start at. And I've sold stuff for higher. I mean, I've done a project for $10,000, which was 180 images and 4 videos for 10K.
Super. Thank
So
you. That's really helpful for people listening because I think some people are really
yeah.
struggling to find a barrier, and even just to know that that's a pattern you've emerged. That's awesome. Min, I don't know. Have you
Mhm.
felt like that's a topic that brings you clarity, or
I mean, it's such a range, and
Yeah.
I expect that to also be disrupted as more people come into the space, especially
Hmm.
people around the world, and there's probably going to be a premium on people who are more experienced or
You
who've
get
been
what you
in
pay
the
for
game
in
for longer.
space.
Yeah, but it's interesting because what this just gets me thinking about like Blair Witch and Mad Max, the original Mad Max, not the current Mad Max, and um even Get Out. Get Out was made for like what, like $4
El
million
Mariachi
dollars.
is the old school?
Hmm.
Yeah, like so, like
I,
there are these films that have been made for very low budgets, but still made millions of dollars, and I hope that is going to be the trend in AI. That the budgets go down, but the revenues maintain or go up. You know,
yeah. And I think you get what you pay for sure in AI. Like I've seen projects that I've done stuff that's been cheaper than that, but it was like to get a client in the door. And of course there's the argument that, well, it's just going to be a race to the bottom. Someone's always going to undercut somebody else. But at the end of the day, if you strip it all the way back, you have to think about computational cost. So as a creator, there's a cost to create all of this stuff, and there's those prices are not necessarily cheap.
right,
So when
right,
you start to develop, especially when you talk about IP, and intellectual property, you're creating something custom that's not supposed to be easily replicated. Sure, someone can take an image and copy it and put it into Midjourney and do it that way, but there's a level of quality that kind of exists there that you get in the comfy workflow, for example, that you won't necessarily get in a Midjourney image.
right. Right, which is comes down to technique, right, and comes down
Yeah.
to experience and what I would describe as almost like an AI intuition.
Hmm.
Like people who played with a lot of tools start to have just an instinctive sense of
And
what
what
would solve
tool
this
is,
problem. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
And certain tools have their quirks, they all have their quirks. Some really excel at one thing and others excel at another. And you wouldn't know that without, at this point, I've spent thousands of hours with these tools. Like I know down to what tool does what better than others and where to go, depending on what iteration of even the models that we're at now. Let's look at Runway, for example, right? So in the past year alone, Runway's gone through Gen 2, Gen 3, and Gen 4 and different variations of those tools with different tool sets. Like I still go back to Runway Gen 3 because there's a static camera in there that's an actual static camera. Whereas Gen 4, you could prompt for it, but you're going to go through multiple iterations to get the same thing. So just because it's the newest tool doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to do what you need. You need to know that, Gen 3 is the thing for the static camera that's going to work for you to give you that ambient background that you need.
Right.
On the other end of sort of the hot topics, just because I just saw something yesterday that I love just hearing what people think about slop. Because I actually find slop to
Me
be a
too.
fascinating new, like the same way that like vibe coding emerged as this word that literally just
Mhm.
I think we're in that interesting phase of culture where like new terms are emerging, new things that mean things and are
Yeah.
polarizing or confusing, and they're fun to. What do these words mean to different people? And I think that the obvious
Mhm.
is that slop is often a derogatory term. It's usually not said with a genteel nature, but
Or
at the same time,
optimism.
it then gets co-opted by the people on the other side. And we had someone in our community that they have like slop.film or slop.club. I forget. Like they have a whole and they might have been talking to you about they're doing these live streaming events. But I guess like I had this conversation with somebody recently, and it really pissed them off because they just didn't like where I was going with it. That is like, I think this is like
Mhm.
another way of talking about graffiti. That like
Yeah.
graffiti to some people is just garbage, just spray paint on the walls that kind of makes it vandalizes public spaces. But then people started taking that act and doing something interesting with it. And then some people started
Think of like a
like
B-rated
I'm just saying
movie.
this is a
The
cultural thing that's
same.
happened before. What do you think about slap? Sorry, I don't mean I
Mhm.
just have a lot to feel about it.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And I love slop because of exactly what you're talking about. And arguably, people will say my content is slop because it's not this polished cinematic experience. But you know what? My content broke out of the bubble and I'm getting, all this fan stuff now and fanfare outside of the bubble. And it's funny, a well known creator, I got a message from him this morning. It was like, I was hanging out with my friends last night and the topic of AI video came up. And one of the girls said, "Oh my god, I love Blacklight's cryptid dating game." And it's arguably the sloppiest slop that I make, and she loves it. But it took him back because this is a filmmaker who focuses on the polish and the details and making sure that there's no artifacts and everything. So I could only imagine how that conversation went because there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time to make sure that it's like picture perfect, and I just don't focus on that, and I lean into it. I agree, like B-rated movies, Rocky Horror Picture Show. Not a cinematic masterpiece, but cult following that's 40 years old now. And it's still growing. People are still going to these shows, so there's a place for all types of art and artists out there.
It's also that this
Yeah,
friction is the pattern. Like that's what it looks like
yeah,
when something interesting is happening. That's like when somebody's getting pissed
hmm
off, it's eliciting an emotion, like whether and that's what
yeah,
art does.
and that's art. That's what
Like
art's supposed to do.
impressionism pissed off all the people that spent a lot of time doing like near photoreal, hard crafted earned skills and art schools. And then somebody said like, well, what if I just
Hmm.
like spackle like paint on a wall and call it a river? That pissed somebody off.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
and that I don't know, I just think I don't mean to sell anybody on it, but I think notice that this is that pattern, that sometimes it means things to different people at least.
yeah.
um,
Yeah, and I love being kind of on the front of it. It's so funny. We had the Escape Awards earlier this year, and I that to me was a really important moment in our space and our industry because it's not like these other competitions that are hosted by a company where they might already have a short list of people they want to promote or something like that. It was peer reviewed, right? As people that are on the platform voting for each other. And as we're watching the awards and everybody's got their cinematic stuff, and then I got the first prize as like the Alchemist, which is like the tester, the one that's on there. And as we're watching all these really like cinematic films, then all of a sudden pops up Cryptid Dating Game. And I fell out of my chair laughing, because I'm like, to think that I'm at the level of these other creators, but I'm just doing it differently and testing. There's a market for it. So people love, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting to say.
All
the
right. Well,
least.
I guess like one last question I had is like in the same space that you have all these people that just hit you up on TikTok, the Machine Cinema podcast in our infinite reach, like we reach millions of people every day. If right now you're reaching, if right now you're reaching somebody, what is that collab dream partner? Who's someone that you would love to work with, or what's a type of thing that you just want to put into the universe?
Oh man.
Again, you're reaching
Honestly,
everybody right now. Like
great.
This is practically the biggest opportunity you've had. Thank you.
It's huge. We're redefining what podcasts are considered to be. We're so big
in this moment right now.
Like Conan, right? I mean,
right?
He's just.
Yeah, no, I actually am working on a couple projects right now that I'm really excited about. And yeah, I think really any sort of collaborative project. I'm a big fan of the kind of flat style where you can riff off of each other. I'm not very good at having someone over me kind of pointing me and telling me what to do. So any sort of collaborative flat engagement, creating a new IP, totally down. I do collaborations all the time and open to it. I was talking to A's yesterday, and he's getting ready to do some Red Rainbow stuff. And he's like, I want to do some collaborative opportunities with some upcoming scenes. I'm like, down. So I'm always down to collaborate with people and create new things, because, some of my stuff the best stuff has come from collaboration. So yeah, meet people, meet the people that you attract to, and work together on stuff and see what comes out of it. Well, bless you.
Amazing. Look, honestly, I've been excited to have this conversation, because we're also proud to have you in our community, and it's so great to see people winning and doing it. I don't know if it's on just their terms, it's on the new terms, of how do we sort of build perhaps even. I think that's something that might excite some people or surprise others. But thank you for coming on today. Just if for some reason people haven't found you, where do people find you? If you could remind us.
You can find me all over social media at Blvckl AI, and the A is a V, because the regular name Blvckl is the A and the I are just upside down. For the AI,
wait, I was gonna. Did you already know that, man? That's what the hack in there. That's awesome. No. All right, Easter egg, amazing. Love it.
So when you say when you look at Blvckl, it's always BLVCKL exclamation point GHT, and it's just AI upside down.
Thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun.
Thanks, man. Talk soon.
See ya.